That was Oh Snap by one of my favorite composers, Amanda Harberg, who we have here today. I'm so excited for this conversation we're about to have about her new clarinet piece, Oh Snap. But I want to start too by saying thank you so much to the International Clarinet Association for doing New Music Weekend again. I know that these events are not easy because this is new music by living composers that have, copyright protections, and putting the stuff on YouTube can get very complicated. But the ICA is doing that work, and that's really important. So thank you to the ICA for doing that. So we are here for Oh Snap today to talk about Oh Snap. But I know a lot of clarinetists tuning in today will know you from your clarinet sonata. So all of that, tell us a little bit about yourself and where you're coming from.
So it's so nice to be here, Eric, one of my very favorite collaborators. Thank you, ICA, and thank you, Eric, for featuring me and Oh Snap. So I just love writing for woodwinds and writing chamber music that is in part because I love collaborating. And since I'm a pianist, I get to play with the performers, and it just creates a very vital sort of energy. So when I heard you playing Horace Staccato last year, and when I got to know you through the Representatoire project, um, I just felt your personality so much. And this piece just like popped into my head. Writing had not been forthcoming for a few months. And your personality and your playing triggered Oh Snap so powerfully.
That
So
is so awesome. The way I discovered you is actually from my student, Haley. And you know this story, Haley finding your clarinet sonata and just introducing me to it. And we both, learned it together and fell in love with it. We've kind of watched that piece enter the standard rep of the clarinet, which is not easy to do. Um, and, people might even know, clarinetists might even know your piccolo sonata and concerto, because these pieces are just taking off, and they're both concerti as well. The clarinet sonata was a concerto that also played at ICA, and that piece is taking off. I wonder what it's like to watch these pieces take off like that and kind of get a life of their own, um, and enter the standard repertoire. That has to be so exciting. What is that like?
like somebody pinch me. Yeah, it's really an honor because I have so much respect for my fellow musicians, and to know that people are taking satisfaction and meaning from playing my stuff. That's just what it's all about. It's incredibly gratifying, and it means the world to me. It's very exciting. But
That's so cool.
it also puts sort of it makes writing more difficult in a way. Because I feel like, can I do that again?
Mm. Oh,
So
that's so interesting. Yeah.
uh,
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that now because I wanted to get to that. But you mentioned the Representatoire project, which is this project that I created down here where I teach at Coastal Carolina University. And actually, our first two guests are very special composers, Valerie Coleman, and then you being the second guest. And what I don't know if I intended to do, but what ended up happening was here are two composers that are performer composers, and I think that is so cool. And as you know, I'm taking some composition lessons now, and I'm really trying to learn the art of composition. I just wrote my first little solo work and stuff. And I'm wondering the same thing. Could I do it again? And not that that's my opus one or anything. Um, but yeah, it's so. I wonder if you can tell us a little bit about the process of like compositionally, how did you come up with this? Because Oh Snap, I think people hear it and they just like, there's so many amazing characters in it, and there's so much personality in it. What did that process look like writing a piece like that?
um there's yeah, there's a lot in what you just said, but I backing up once, and then I'll get to that. I think every piece we write, um it's just such sort of a miracle, the whole creative process, and it's so mysterious. Like, you never know what you're going to find when you make something from nothing. And every
Mm,
time, it's kind of daunting to be faced with them with a blank page.
mm,
And I think you're experiencing that now that you're composing. So
mm.
and it never, just so you know, it never gets easier. But uh about Oh Snap, as you know, I didn't have time to write Oh Snap, and I had other commissions that had to get done. And when we talked about it first, before we knew each other as well, I said, we wrote into the contract that I would make every best effort to get the piece on time. But as I told you, um, it was gonna have to kind of be a miracle. And uh,
Mm.
when I heard you play Horace Staccato, And then I started listening to all of your videos and just hearing the way you put your personality into your already extremely virtuosic playing. There's such a joy in that, and such a sort of a flamboyance to that, and a theatricality, and it was so engaging to me. And then I just sat down and started improvising the opening groove, and that sort of invited the ideas in my head. And I was hearing a lot of your glistening and your growling, and that also just materialized into the melodic lines. I came up with melodic material that were influenced by what I knew you could do, and they just sort of met, the substance, the materials, and the personality all sort of um, influenced each other's directions.
That's so interesting. And I love it. I think going back to this idea of the performer composer, it's so interesting to me, right? Because so many of the great composers throughout history have been performers as well. And it feels like that fell out of favor for a while. But I think that's the reason why, like, nobody else could have written this piece but you. And it's because you're such a creative composer, but you also have such a great performer mindset. I don't know how to exactly say it, but I've been so inspired by, and Valerie's the same way, this kind of like performer informing the composer, and vice versa, like inspiring each other. And to me, that's kind of the power of Oh Snap, because it's such a performer piece. And I keep telling you, I'm so excited to hear more clarinetists do it, because there's no way you can ever play that piece the same twice, you know? I have a student now working on it, and it's just so cool to hear it and think about new possibilities with it, and all of that. So, but I mean, what do you think about that, and how do you think? Because you kind of have like that two sides of the brain, performer, composer. How do those inform each other?
That's a great question. As a performer, I know, like, when I play something that gives me life and that it gives me ideas and it feels good to play. It's really important to me that something feel good to play. So that, and when I write for winds, or any instrument, I listen a lot to, the favorite pieces of whichever instrument, and try to understand what makes it idiomatic, and understand how the different registers impact the sounds and the way that you approach the instrument, and what kinds of breathing is required for the wind instruments, because each different woodwind or brass requires a different kind of breathing, and how that's going to impact the phrasing and the lines, and how often do they need to breathe, and how fast does the air move, and all of those things that make the personality of each of these instruments. And I guess I think a lot about what makes the instrument sparkle and brings it to life. And I guess it's easier. I mean, it's something that I think about since I am a performer as well. That I know, like, how I want to feel when I play. So I just think about how to give that to somebody else who I'm writing for.
I
Also,
love that.
I can see, like, it's helped me a lot with engraving and notation, which is not, I never considered that to be my strong point. But when I play other people's music and I see things that are not clear, or that it's easier to, it's helped me to refine my own engraving process, and knowing what's important to me to see as a performer, what I need to see on the page, and what needs to be
Mm,
clear, which is something that I'm constantly working on and
mhm,
hopefully getting better on. But that side of things also is helped by performing your own work.
mm. Oh, that's so interesting. It's from the performer side of it. It can be something as silly as like a bad page turn or something, and we're so
Yeah.
turned off by that. But I have to say, when I got Oh Snap unexpectedly way before it was due, you know, it was beautifully engraved and had every possible beautiful marking and everything needed. So I was so impressed with that. So,
That is in part because of Dorico. I mean,
shout out.
not the editing details, because obviously I did that myself, but the layout and just the style of engraving, just the visual look of it.
Yeah.
Uh, like my finale, if I had done that on finale, it wouldn't have looked anything like what I sent you.
I have to agree. I've been using Dorico lately too, and it's kind of a joke with my Pierrot ensemble. We know when we get a piece that somebody did in finale. It's like, oh, this was finale. Yeah. And I know people are mourning the loss of finale, so we'll leave
Yeah,
it there. But
I mean, I am too.
yeah, no, absolutely.
It's horrible, but
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, I think one of the things I admire most about you is you're such a creator and you've created so many beautiful things. And that's what musicians do, right? Whether we're performer, composers, anything, we're creating something from nothing. And that's
Mhm.
such a powerful form of magic, really, you know? So for those people who are watching this and are thinking, I would like to get into composing. I play the clarinet, or I would love to get into performing or any other passion project they may have. What's your advice for that person?
That's such a good question. I think I would say to a young person or anybody who wants to who wants to compose or create in any way, um, I would say it's a combination between inspiration and hard work. And I think we all have a genius inside of us, and it's a matter of tapping that. Um, and we have to trust our instincts when you get an idea. If you're a clarinetist and you're noodling around on your instrument, suddenly you find something that's like, wow, that's really cool. Do it again, play it again, and maybe record it into your voice memo, maybe jot it down or an approximation of what it was, and then just sort of meditate on it and play it over and over and see where it wants to go. And your
Mhm,
instincts are going to tell you what to do with it. And then when you run out of, when you get to that point where you don't know what to do next, then your brain steps in. And then your brain says, well, as a composer, you have several tools that composers have had since the beginning of composing time. And
mhm,
we use our tools are repetition, our tools are modulation and their sequencing,
mhm,
our tools are
mhm,
using inversion to explore our materials. Our tools are using augmentation and diminution. Um, Tools are creating rhythmic variation, ornamentation. Um, these kinds of melodic tools can, when you get to that point where you don't know what to do next, get those tools out of your tool bag and start using them, and just try all of them, try different things,
mhm,
see what resonates. And
mhm.
you might like not like most of what you do, but you're not going to find the thing that you do like until you do that hard work.
Yeah.
And you might throw out, I throw out 65% of what I write, uh 60%, 70%.
Yeah. Yeah.
And but I don't find the pieces that I'm proud of and that mean something to me. I don't find those pieces until I go through that very, very arduous process. Um, Flex your muscles. That's what I
Mhm,
would say to a young person.
mhm.
Explore and work it and trust your instincts. Don't let anybody tell you, if you really believe in something that you've written, and if it has that energy for you, don't let somebody tell you that it's, something about it that, don't let somebody discourage you. Trust your instincts. I
Yeah.
had so many people tell me as a young person that I couldn't write tonal music, or that melody's dead. And I'm
Yeah.
like, uh,
Yeah.
nope. And I just
Yeah.
kept
Right.
writing tonal music and melodic music. And the more they told me that, the more I reacted by writing even more tonal and melodic music. Because I grew up in the 90s when that was not very much in fashion.
Right.
But you might, if you have a composition teacher or a teacher who's guiding you, they might tell you 10 things. You might take 2 of them. That's fine. If the others
Right.
don't resonate for you, just you're your own teacher first. So just trust your instincts. That's what I would tell
Mm.
young people who are diving into this.
Oh, fantastic. I love that so much. I think it's so helpful too to hear that you're not using 60, 65, 70% of sometimes what you write. I mean, that's just part of the process, but that is what it's all of that trial and error that enabled you to find that motive that we love so much, or, that creative piece that put everything else in motion, and I love that so much. And I think sometimes we underestimate ourselves too. As a clarinetist, as clarinetists that are listening today, the clarinet really well. You can write for the clarinet, you know, and I think we underestimate ourselves. Nobody writes for the flute like Valerie Coleman, nobody writes for wind quintet like Valerie Coleman. Your piano piece that you played here, Four Sisters, was so incredibly pianistic and also so incredibly you. Nobody else could have written that piece either, right? So thank you so much. That was so inspiring.
I would also just say, be wary of the playback. Not, I mean, I use it plenty, but I use it very carefully. I don't use it until I've defined my materials. I don't rely on it. I try not to rely on it for the fundamental parts of the process. I use it later in the game. I do everything initially by hand, and
Mhm.
a lot of stuff I do at the instrument, but I think the playback does a lot of the thinking for us. And
Mhm.
it a lot of times we commit to the ideas too soon before they're ready to be committed to. They're still in a period of transformation and development. And
Right.
when the playback does them, something solidifies. And we assume that they're sort of in stone, but they're not ready to be in stone.
I feel like you're talking directly to me because I just had this experience because, in this composition class that I'm in now, I'll write something and I am using playback with Dorico. And then, but I'm a performer, but, I'm hearing what's in Dorico. And then this, flute grad student plays my piece and it's so much better than what I heard in Dorico, like so much better than even what I wrote. And that's what a great performer does. But, we're so limited by that playback. I'm so glad you mentioned that. It's so inspiring just to hear you kind of talk about your process. I'm reminded of, when Valerie was here years ago, she said something kind of similar in terms of like, sometimes over in history, the door has been closed for some of us, right? And now the door maybe is open for
Yeah.
more of us.
Yeah.
But the door is open. It's actually harder to walk through the door, you
Yeah.
know and so just when you're talking about the creative process, being open to just being on a path, you might not know where it's going to take you, and that's terrifying actually. you
Totally.
know I was so inspired when you were here, and you can see it's framed on my like wall of fame. But I didn't plan this, but I should show this because I'm so inspired by you gifted me
Oh.
when you were here the sketches for Oh Snap. And this is like one of the most inspirational things I've ever seen because if you really stare at this long enough, you see exactly what you're talking about.
I
A
think it was
little,
probably in a different key too, right? Initially.
yes, but you knew we had that good high
Right.
C. So you
I had to transpose it.
see, I love that. But what I love about looking at this is you can see here's this motive, here's the other motive, and the way the piece from that initial inspiration just, I don't want to say wrote itself because it's not easy, but you can see what happened. You can see
Like
the,
I initially had the dun, dun, dun. I initially had your when you first come in, I think it was on the second degree of the scale, and then I moved it to the seventh degree of the scale.
uh-huh.
Um, and like things like that, like
Mm-hmm.
melody initially might not have started on two, it would have started on a different scale degree. And I think the
Mm.
note was different also. So that I had to like really work it and explore it in order for just to get the basic elements in place in a way that I liked. It made
Mm-hmm.
such a difference. Like it was a little smarmy when it was on the second degree.
Mm.
And it's already borderline kitschy, right? So
That's
it
what I
couldn't,
love about
I didn't want it to get
it.
overly smarmy. So by changing the scale degree, then it was just a little more tasteful.
Mm. Da da dee da. I love that. It's so good. I love it. I love it so much. I have one last question for you. You know, as I mentioned, my student Haley discovered your clarinet sonata and fell in love with it, and then introduced me to the clarinet sonata. I fell in love with it. I feel like a lot of clarinetists know your clarinet sonata and have fallen in love with it. And you know, when you listen to the clarinet sonata, you hear it's, you know, you hear a love for the clarinet. Like you really love the clarinet.
Thank you.
What do you love about the clarinet?
Um, I didn't used to love the clarinet. Like I fell in love with the clarinet later in life. I think I must, well, I wrote the clarinet sonata in 2014, 15. So it was around then when I fell in love with it. I had not heard the Copland Concerto before. And that piece just made something click in my brain. And now I'll never go back. That instrument, it just, I love it so much. But uh, it's got this mellifluous quality that no other instrument has. And on top of just the ability to shape notes so powerfully. And it's such an unusual sound without the vibrato. It's so bell-like and so sweet. And also it has so many colors, like the low
Mm,
register and the mid, it's such a great instrument for creating structure around the registers, like use
mm,
structure to, using the registers to reflect the structure of a piece. It's really powerful for that, since it has such distinguished, distinctive timbres in each different register. Um, and then also just the sheer virtuosity of the instrument. It's so versatile in what it can do that it enables a lot of different kind of ideas.
mm. And you hear all of that in the clarinet sonata, and that's why we love it. So I cannot imagine a better way to end ICA New Music, you know, our conversation than that, all that outpouring of love for the clarinet. And just a huge thank you to you in talking with us today, and all of your incredible clarinet music that you've written, and all the incredible clarinet music you are yet to write, I'm sure, or we hope. So anyway, thank you so much. And until next time, bye everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.